Hey guys, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. First of all, if you didn't see my community post, I collapsed yesterday. I think it was my potassium. My heart started beating weird. I had an incident and I passed out and hit the floor. I've got some scratches. My wrist is swollen, a few bumps and bruises, but I'm okay. Luckily my husband was here. So anyway, that's why I didn't do any videos yesterday. Today, I am going to do a video about the Idaho quadruple murders. I waited to do it until after the presser to see if there was any new information. There were a few tiny bits of new information, but mostly it was just what we already know. If you notice, the tip line that I have up here is different because now there is also a link from the FBI, which I will add to the information in the description box below. They still have no suspects, no weapon, nobody in custody. So we're kind of, I guess, not really at a standstill. They're working and they're processing, and there's a lot that we're just going to have to patiently wait for. They have been released to their families. Ethan's family has already had his funeral. I'm going to show you first a video that kind of summarizes where we're at, and then we're going to just break stuff down step by step and kind of talk in detail about just theories, speculation, where this investigation's going, what they might be doing, what are they looking for, who might it be, just things like that. So I'm going to show you this video first. It's pretty recent. I think yesterday it came out. And I thought it was good because it shows you where they've kind of expanded the crime scene and just they talk about everything. So let's take a look at that.
We're getting new information about the violent murders of 4 college students in Idaho. Detectives revealing the initial 911 call came from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Police also saying for the first time that there were several other friends at the house when that 911 call came in, which of course was hours after the actual murders themselves. Now, despite these details, police tonight still have no suspect, no weapon, no motive. Camilla Bernal is out front in Moscow, Idaho.
This incident has shaken our community, and we continue to mourn for the victims.
More than a week after the killings of 4 University of Idaho students, the mystery over who murdered them only deepens. As investigators search the crime scene, police revealing who is not considered a suspect, beginning with the 2 roommates asleep in the home, as 4 others were stabbed to death.
How does one individual kill 4 people at night and not wake up the other 2 roommates?
I don't even know that information at this point in time, and that's why we're continuing to investigate.
But police able to clear the roommates as suspects, adding that one of their phones was used to place the 911 call just before noon that day. The initial caller not revealed, and police say several people talked to the dispatcher.
There was other friends that had arrived at the location.
Those friends first called over by the roommates when they thought one of the victims was passed out and not waking up. Also cleared as a suspect, a man Kaylee Gonzalez called several times after she got home at 1:45 a.m. Her family says it was an ex-boyfriend and that they never suspected him.
He is not a suspect. He is not suspicious. He is 100% innocent in this.
Police also cleared as a suspect someone seen in video from a food truck that 2 of the victims visited that night. and a driver that picked up Gonzalez and Madison Mogan to bring them home after visiting the food truck.
Homicide by stabbing.
The murder weapon, we know, is a fixed blade knife, generally much stronger than a kitchen knife and commonly used in hunting. Police say all 4 victims were likely sleeping at the time of the attack, but some possibly woke up and defended themselves.
There were stab wounds on the hands of at least one of the students that make it appear that it would be defensive wounds.
Authorities canvassing neighborhoods for clues and additional video as flyers reading "Please help" appeared around the neighborhood. Kaylee Gonzalez's mother telling NBC she's urging the killer to end the mystery.
The guilt has got to be just overwhelming. It's got to be
hiding.
sickening. Stop hiding, stop running.
And all of these families want to find the killer. They want answers, they want justice. But in the meantime, they're also planning funerals. Ethan Chapin's, the 20-year-old, his funeral is happening as we speak. Cameras were not allowed inside of the service, but his mother spoke before that service. She was extremely emotional, saying that her son is one of the most incredible people you'll ever meet. They asked everyone to wear blue because he is a triplet, and blue was his triplet color.
Okay, I thought that was a good way to start the video because it kind of shows you everything we're going to talk about, all the people that we're going to be discussing today, and I just thought that was a pretty good lead-in. I want to apologize. I feel off today still. I'm trying really hard to be my normal self, but there's so much going on, not just what happened to me. If y'all have been here from the beginning, you might remember my husband got injured in a military training accident and had to have surgery. And now there's a secondary injury that we're dealing with that he had to go be seen about tomorrow, which that injury is why he happened to be home when I collapsed. So, also, I was supposed to be in Massachusetts right now having Thanksgiving with my son and daughter-in-law. But with everything that's been going on with me, I wasn't able to go. And, you know, it's not fun missing out on that. And then also, you know, my daughter gets woke up yesterday by her dad before he leaves saying, hey, you need to get up because mom passed out. And then I have to message my boys and say, hey, there was an incident and I collapsed. And it's just a lot. So, and it's a really, really dreary day here today. It's really kind of like dark and overcast, and it feels so much later than it is. And so just bear with me. And I know I'm a mess, but all right, let's just get into it. So a lot of people have been asking about the BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. They're a part of the FBI. I think probably most of us in the true crime community are pretty familiar with them. I don't know if maybe some of you that are from outside of the United States, maybe you're not as familiar. There's a TV show called Criminal Minds, which really kind of highlights what they do. There is a show on Netflix that I loved. It was called Mindhunter, and that's kind of where the BAU started. It was really interesting. But the reason that they have been brought in here is they're going to do victimology on all 4 victims. Since there's 4 victims, we need to know about all of them. If this was targeted by doing the victimology on all of them, it may help them figure out who was targeted and why. And then, of course, they're doing a profile of who the perpetrator may be. You know, what kind of characteristics might this person have? Age range, things like that. You know, is it a student? Is it someone from the community? You know, is this the type of crime that would be done by somebody random or a possible serial killer type? And why the victims were chosen, why them? You know, if it wasn't random, if it was targeted, why those specific victims. That's all stuff that the BAU will be working on by going through the scene, going through the evidence, going through the histories of these people, who they're connected with, you know, what they did in the community, things like that. They're going to put it all together and come up with a working profile to help guide the investigation, hopefully in the right direction, to find out who did this. Possible motives. So typically your motives are revenge, rejection, power, anger, terror, even greed or sex. But I think revenge, rejection, power, anger, and terror, this case feels like it's kind of a combination of all of those if he knew them. Now, I say that because if it was random, then it's probably not revenge or rejection, but it could still be that sense of power and control and rage and anger and to terrorize the victims. But if they knew this person or this person knew them, revenge and rejection, I put those at the top of my list. And the reason that I say that is like social rejection, maybe, you know, like peer rejection by one of the victims or all of the victims. And I was trying to explain it to my husband. He doesn't really get the whole Greek life thing, but they were all members of the Greek community, fraternity and sororities. And a lot of times in the Greek community, you're either in or you're out. And, you know, some people just, they don't take that well. They don't take, like, if they don't get accepted into the Greek community, they take it hard. Or say there's one particular fraternity or one particular sorority that they really wanted to be a part of and they don't get in for some reason, they may take that rejection really personally and really hard. It's kind of like I told my husband, like in school shootings, you think about like the cool kids, the popular kids, a lot of times they're targeted. You know, it could be this, that because this person was rejected, like in this example from the Greek community, they feel like they're not as cool as the Greeks. And believe me, not everybody thinks the Greeks are the cool kids, but if this person looks at them that way, it could be that. It could be something as dumb as that. Or if they were in and got kicked out for some reason, or, you know, it's a financial thing as well. What if they were in and something happened and they couldn't afford to stay a part of that organization, and they're angry that, you know, these other people are able to afford to stay in and stay cool. And then it could also be, let's think about the girls. Okay, what if there's a guy that, you know, maybe he's part of their social circle, you know, maybe he is friends with them, but he's interested in them in a way, like he wants to take them out, like he would like to date them, you know, be their boyfriend, be more than a friend. But the girls are like, I'm not interested. You know, you're a good guy. I'm just, you know, I'm not interested. And he kind of got friend zoned and he didn't appreciate that. You know, maybe he feels like, you know, how come I'm not good enough? Or, you know, Maddie and Zaina both have boyfriends. You know, maybe he's like, well, what's so special about them? You know, if they were fixated on Xana, maybe they're mad at Ethan. Like, Why is he so special? What does she see in him that I don't have, kind of thing? Or, you know, they feel like they're making all these efforts or grand gestures trying to get in the good graces of whichever girl, and it's not working, and they're getting frustrated. Like, why don't they see what I'm doing for them? Why don't, you know, just that kind of thing. It could be something like that. You know, jealousy is a weird thing. You know, some people get jealous over just the tiniest things, you know, jealousy, envy, it, you know, it eats people up, and it could be something like that. Again, this is all just speculation. I'm just throwing stuff out there that what if, maybe if kind of thing, just to get your brains going to see what you think. So we've talked probably every investigation when we're looking for someone, a suspect, a perpetrator, whatever, that, you know, you start close and you work your way out. So you start with the victims, and in this case we've got 4. So, you know, probably initially we're gonna go like family, friends, roommates, boyfriends, girlfriends, and then is there anyone overlapping among the 4? You know, friends in common, you know, things like anything overlapping that somebody may have had a connection to all 4. But they're also going to be looking at each one, a circle for each one individually, in case only one was the target. But like I said, you're going to go like family, friends, roommates, boyfriends, girlfriends. You're going to expand out. You're going to have classmates, coworkers, the Greek community, not just their particular fraternity or sorority, but all of the Greek community. How did they interact with other fraternities, sororities, things like that? I know at my college they had like all Greek brothers and sisters. Like, I'm in this sorority and this guy is my all Greek brother from whatever fraternity. It's a whole thing. They're going to look at their neighbors, their exes, their associates, college community, the whole college community, the Moscow community as a whole, because, you know, they're going out into the community, right? They work in the community. Customers of wherever they work. I know 2 of the girls were servers at the Mad Greek. Customers, people who work nearby, where they live, where they work, places that they frequent. Are there restaurants, bars, gyms, whatever that they go to regularly? You know, they're just going to have to keep expanding out until they finally get to the point that they're just like, okay, it could be somebody random. And I heard a really good quote the other night in an interview, and the person said the suspect may not be close to them, but close enough, which to me makes a lot of sense, that they're kind of on the fringes of their social circle. They know them, they know of them. Like, the victims might know of them, but maybe the perpetrator feels like he knows the victims. You know, he wants to be known by them, but he's not as known as he wants to be, if that makes any sense. And so while we're talking about, you know, circles and known and unknown and things like that, I want to share what Kaylee's mom, what her opinion is about if they knew the killer.
They keep saying no sign of forced entry.
Right.
Do you think that this was somebody that was known to them?
I think that that's kind of an impossible question. I think it's a very popular house.
As a mother, I feel like they know. I do. I've always felt that way. Nobody has told me that anyway. I just feel like, I mean, this is a college town. It's a small town. I feel the girls knew this person.
But we don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't. Yeah, we absolutely don't know that. I just feel it in my heart that they knew the person, and I've always felt that way. I don't know why, but I've always said they knew him. They knew him. They know him. Yeah. I just don't feel like this was like some rando just driving through Moscow, happened to stop by their house.
I will say they did have a keypad on their front door, and it was a very popular house. So I know for a fact that people who weren't necessarily roommates of the house did have that code. So no sign of forced entry doesn't necessarily mean that they were invited in. That's all I can say.
And the people that survived were on the first floor.
To our knowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then if they come in through the keypad, is it possible to bypass a room on the first floor and go up to the second floor and third
Correct.
floor?
Yes. Yes. There's also a door in the back that just leads directly to the middle floor.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree. It definitely could be somebody random. Definitely. But we're going to get in later in the video why it feels personal, like somebody knew them, somebody was watching them. Like I said, maybe they didn't know the perpetrator per se, but the perpetrator knew them. He had been watching them. And when I say that, this could be, I'm going to bring him up again because I always do, BTK. His victims, he called them projects, and he would stalk them. He would follow them for quite some time before he actually went in and killed them. He was following their routines, learned, their patterns of behavior, things like that. Like, he really got to know them. And it could be that type of situation here. They could have been being watched for quite some time. So the majority of mass killings are with a gun, but this one is a knife. And so that makes it kind of unique. I'm going to go ahead and put this picture up here, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. I've said before, a knife is really personal. You're up close in their face. It's messy. You have to use a lot of brute force. To kill 4 people would take a lot of strength. It really would. It's very violent. It causes terror, but probably most importantly, it's quiet. And that may be why they chose it on this particular occasion. But maybe the perpetrator didn't have access to a gun. Maybe they didn't have resources to purchase a gun, or for some reason they can't have a gun. Whatever. Maybe this was just the weapon of convenience, the weapon of necessity. But also, a knife, it's not as easy to trace as a gun might be. So there could be several reasons that the perpetrator would choose a knife. And if he wasn't expecting to kill 4 people, then it might make even more sense. But to think about brutally stabbing 4 people multiple times and the amount of effort that would require is crazy. Now, I know there would be adrenaline going and things like that to power you through, but I can't imagine 4 people. And we know there was a struggle with some. So you have to factor that in as well. This was a very physical crime. So, they need to be looking, and they are, at anyone that is fixated with knives, especially this particular kind, this fixed blade knife. A particular knife, even if somebody, is showing off their knife, kind of like the Moscow Slayer was on Instagram. You know, they're obsessed with their knife, you know, and they're always showing it off. Could be a collector of knives or these particular types of knives. It could be someone who's fascinated with like the military, because this particular knife, which is what the locals have said the police were looking for, was the K-bar, is a military knife. And maybe someone's fascinated with the military and that's why they like this particular knife. Maybe it's someone who tried to get in the military but couldn't for whatever reason. They were rejected from getting into the military. Maybe they were in the military and they failed out of boot camp, or they were discharged for some reason. I've heard them talking about the ROTC program. Now, I went to school on an ROTC scholarship, and we were never issued a knife. We had guns when we went out for our field training exercises. We had our M16s and things like that, but we were never given knives like these. It could be completely different these days. I don't know, but I have heard people mentioning the ROTC program at the college, and maybe they didn't get the knife from the ROTC program, but maybe it's someone that's in the ROTC program. Who knows? So it's a unique knife, and it may tell us something about the person using it. Idaho's a hunting state, though, and a lot of outdoorsmen, survivalists, hunters, they use these kind of knives. So it may not be as unique as it would be in other places. You know what I'm saying? They may have this knife not for a nefarious reason. They just have it because they hunt. And that, you know, that could really broaden the pool of suspects. You know, there may be quite a few people there that have this kind of knife, and it's just because they hunt. And as far as being a hunter, it kind of fits with, if you're a hunter and you're using this kind of knife, you know, and let's say you're a deer hunter and you're used to field dressing a deer. I'm not going to get too graphic. The amount of blood isn't going to affect you. Let's say this is your first murder, and, you know, maybe you're not expecting how gruesome stabbing someone to death is going to be. Well, this person did it 1, 2, 3, 4 times in a row, and we've heard how much blood. We've seen the blood dripping. It was a messy scene, and that didn't seem to deter them at all. It's not like they started stabbing the first victim and were like, oh my God, and the blood freaked them out and they quit. They're used to it. And a hunter that field dresses animals would likely be used to blood. May not be adverse to large amounts of blood. It may not bother them at all. So it's just something else to think about. Now, why a fixed blade knife? And I put K-bar up here because, like I said, that's the one that local stores said law enforcement came in asking about. I think the reason they may be focusing on this style of knife is what I have circled in the picture. That's called a hilt. It's kind of like a crossbar on the knife. Like if this is the knife, you've got this thing going across here right before the handle. You can even see it where the guy's holding it in his hand, and it stops the slipping of your hand. Theoretically, your hand's going to hit the hilt and you're not going to hit the blade with your hand. But the hilt in these vicious stabbings will leave a bruise. So if you get stabbed with that kind of knife, the hilt is going to hit where you're stabbed. So around the stab wound, there's going to be a bruise, a line from the hilt. And I suspect that at least on some of the wounds, there probably was bruising from the hilt of the knife. And that helped them to kind of determine what type they were looking for. They knew it was big. They knew it was long. But, you know, they weren't like, oh, it could have been a butcher knife or whatever. These are stronger than your average kitchen knife, butcher knife, whatever. And I really feel like that hilt probably had something to do with it. That if they were stabbing them and they went all the way in, when the hilt hit, it bruised, it left a mark, and they were able to tell that's the kind of knife. Again, just speculation. But at the same time, if they're stabbing and they hit bone and the knife kicks back against that hilt, hopefully in this case, is not going to be enough to stop you. When that knife kicks back, it could still come back and cut you. So I'm still hopeful that the perpetrator cut himself in the process. I'm very, very hopeful that between the slickness of it being wet from the blood and hitting bone and popping back, maybe he injured himself. Like I said, it sounds awful, but I hope he did. Let's see. Where do we want to go next? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the coroner. She was in the video at the beginning. And there's a lot of people out there. I'm going to put the kids and the tip line up while we're talking about this. There's a lot of people out there saying, did she release too much information? And that's a very good question. Now, the coroner, she is not a medical doctor. She is actually a registered nurse. She has a law degree and a bachelor's in political science, which is all amazing. But it's interesting that she's not a medical doctor. Take that as you will. Hopefully, maybe somebody else was a part of this examination. Anyway, she came out and she started making statements to the press before the police. And there should always be kind of communication between all the agencies, anybody involved, about what information is okay to give out, by who and when, and things like that. And it doesn't seem like that happened here, and that may just speak to the fact that Moscow, Idaho, just, you know, they're inexperienced at this type of situation. Most places would be. It's not every day you have a quadruple homicide, but they hadn't had a homicide there in like 7 years. So it may just be that. And now that, you know, we've got like the FBI and people involved, it seems like the information is more controlled and more contained. But she came out, like I said, she described the type of knife. She described the wounds, where they were at on the body. Ooh. God. Holy cow, that scared me. Okay, sorry. But But she was talking about the wounds, the locations, that they were in bed, they were sleeping. She talked about the defensive wounds, where the victims were at, things like that. And the reason that that's not good is this gives the perp information on what the investigators know. And it gives them the opportunity to discard and destroy evidence potentially. And it also decreases the amount of guilt knowledge that law enforcement can use to eliminate people. And what do I mean by that? So in investigations, just like this one, we don't get all the answers we want, right? Look at Delphi. There's a lot of stuff that we want to know, but we can't know. And a lot of that is because there are things that only the perpetrator would know. And when law enforcement is interrogating somebody that is potentially a suspect, or let's say, you get people out there all the time that confess to things, but they didn't really do it. So there's knowledge that the investigators have, and the perpetrator, if they know it, then they can say the only way they'd know it is if they were there. Or if the person doesn't know it, doesn't have the right answer, they can say, this isn't our person, or they would know X, Y, Z. So what the coroner gave out, maybe she shouldn't have been as specific about the knife. Maybe she shouldn't have given us the information on the location of the wounds, the defensive wounds, because at first they were like, no defensive wounds, but now we know there were, and that might be guilt knowledge. The perpetrator would know if somebody fought back. Who fought back? Where were the defensive wounds? Where did you stab these victims? Were they in bed? Things like that. I think other than the knife information, everything is kind of vague enough that they can still work with it. I don't know what they're barking about. We know upper body, like neck area for the wounds, but we don't know specifics. The defensive wounds, she's literally said they were stabbed through the hands, so that's kind of out the window. She said they were in bed and they were likely asleep. I think there's room to work there, especially if, like what we're hearing, that Ethan wasn't in bed. Where exactly were they located? But yeah, she may have given a little too much away, and hopefully they're getting her reined in now. There's also information that hasn't come out, like staging or manipulation of the bodies. And, that could be as simple as, let's say, one of the girls upstairs wasn't in bed and she was killed outside the bed, and then the killer moved her into the bed. That would be manipulation, right? Or were they maybe like uncovered and they were killed, and then the perpetrator covered them up, which happens sometimes, especially when there's like a personal relationship between the victim and the killer. So there's still things that we don't know that obviously the killer will know. But what she did give away took away a little bit of that guilt knowledge that could have been used later, I think. And you know, at some point in the investigation, it may be helpful to give out more information, but this early on, they really need to play it very close to the vest, in case something, if they do get an idea of who this person is, the more they have that places that person there, their knowledge of the scene, the better. All right, so let's see. Hang on here, I've got so much. Take this down. Sorry, this is probably going to be another long video. This is what happens when I don't do one every day. Let me take kids down. I know I shouldn't be calling them kids, but to me they're kids. I know they're adults, but okay, so this is just a picture of the house from the front. They've been at the scene a really long time, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I will tell you why. In general, investigators should not give up a crime scene until they have to. And what I mean by that is, like, don't go in and start gathering your evidence and then pack up and go, and then maybe like a day or two later be like, oh, you know what? I want to go back and do whatever. Because that time in between, it could have been altered or disturbed or contaminated in some way. So the longer that you can control a crime scene, that you can keep it basically locked down, like you know who's going in and out and nothing's being altered or changed in any way, the better for evidence collection. So the fact that they have been at this house for days and days and days, like over a week, to me isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, they're taking their time, they're being very thorough, and they're not taking the chance that it could be altered. Now, I do have a few problems with some of what has been going on here. We're going to get into that, but I just wanted to say that I don't think it's necessarily bad that they've been there so long. And I mean, think about, you know, it's a large house. Like I told you the other day, it's 3 floors, 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. We had 5 people in there, and we've been told it was a bloody, messy, sloppy scene. So it's gonna take time to work through all of that mess. I mean, just imagine the amount of things that are potentially evidence that have blood on them that need to be collected, need to be looked at, need to be examined. So I understand why it's taking so long. And you know, they've already kind of got an uphill battle at the scene. And I wrote some notes down on why I say that. So, you know, it was known to be the party house. People are in and out. There were lots of law enforcement in and out, like first responders when they got there, not knowing what they're walking into. You know, they're not walking in knowing like this is a quadruple murder crime scene. So you've got first responders coming in and out to check on the victims and whatever. Friends arrived on the scene before first responders, so you've got them. And then, like I said, it's a messy crime scene. It's sloppy. There's blood everywhere. So, you know, like I said, it's an uphill battle from the get-go. I can't even imagine. It would be one of those situations that you're just like, where do you even begin to start ruling people out? I found this picture. So you see the number 3 up there, and that is a evidence marker. and it is next to what I think looks like a footprint. You see it outlined in red here at the top by the 3 would be the heel, and then the round part at the front would be the toe of a shoe or a boot or whatever. Again, the number of people that have been walking around there, I don't know. Could it be something? Obviously, they thought so because they put an evidence marker down there. So think about things like that. You know, how many footprints could there possibly be around there that they've got to rule out? Oh, this was, you know, officer so-and-so, or this paramedic, or this friend that was over the day before it happened, or, you know, just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And this, the red circle, is roughly where that footprint would have been found. And it's next to, you can see it's like an old couch out there on their patio. So it's probably a place that was frequented by their friends, but it also is leading towards the sliding door. And then there's a window there on the side that has been being photographed, dusted for fingerprints, you know, as a possible entry exit point. So could that possibly be from the killer? Sure. Here's a video from some of the neighbors just to kind of give you an idea of the area, what the house was like. Just to kind of reinforce what I just said about, you know, the comings and goings of people, the number of people that have potentially been in and out of that house.
Honestly, you know, you can wake up in that morning, you know, on Sunday, and you just go to work and you don't really think anything of it. You know, I was at work, and the only thing I heard about was like the unconscious person. And then, you know, I didn't realize it had more severity to it till I got home and I could hear the clicking of the cameras.
It's a really small town feel, lots of hills, but it seems like a really close-knit community. All of my professors and stuff that are from here, seems like they've been here for a decade or longer, and they seem to know just about everybody. So I would say it's a fairly small community, even though there's roughly 20 to 25,000 people here. The officer that came by door to door, he asked if we had any sort of surveillance or if we knew about any other cameras or anything in the area. Sadly, this is an apartment building, and I'm assuming it's relatively old, so there was nothing. Luckily, the apartment sent out an email a couple days ago saying they're adding new lights, which there is a new light up there. They're going to work on installing cameras just so that if anything like this were to happen again, there's a better chance of getting footage of who did it.
It's just nerve-wracking mostly, and stressful because she's always home alone because I work in the evenings and stuff. And just surreal, almost like something out of a TV show, not something that I would have expected to be experiencing so close to home.
It seems like everyone that has been here for a while is just devastated by it. The last murder here was 2015, so 7 years ago. And so it's not something that happens frequently. It's not like we're in a big city where it's an everyday occurrence. So something like this is just sort of rare, doesn't happen often, so people aren't used to it. It's really odd because, I don't know, I've never been this close to any sort of other like crime scene before, I guess, other than like a drug bust. Like walking by a house and seeing cops with like a drug bust, but that's the closest I've ever been to a crime scene. So especially one of this magnitude where I could throw a baseball from my front door to the house, it's just odd.
I mean, for my sister, she lives pretty much across the way. She is in Alpha Gamma Delta. And for me, she walks to my apartment almost every day. And so the concern for me is just her walking by herself in the dark a lot now. Because, you know, in the summer, you know, it's daytime. It's not as scary. But in the dark now, for me, my concern is I just don't let her walk here by herself unless it's during the daytime. And I'll go pick her up now because I don't like her walking by herself.
No, I went to bed early that night, and then I woke up to a bunch of normal, and then a couple hours later, we got a message, and there was a bunch of police here, and then that was the end of normalcy for the past week or so here. Though the day that the police were called here, about an hour or two after that, an officer came by and just went door to door along here just asking if anybody had seen or heard anything. That's the only contact I've had with officers so far.
And then I had left for work like around 11:45, and I never saw or heard anything. The night before, I was up to like 2 and never heard anything at all, anything out of the ordinary. Like it's just been crazy with just how quiet it's been.
Yeah.
Because we're used to having like some sort of music, hearing music when we
They
come
always
home
had
from
little
work.
gatherings, so they always had music going. So, you know, for us, we never assumed anything different.
Yeah.
Because they're so
This
used
house
to.
did.
Yeah, they
Would you
always.
say it's a party house?
Not necessarily. They had like small gatherings, maybe like 10 people or so, and it never really got crazy other than like the usual college student stuff. But they were actually pretty respectful, considering.
The house, occasionally there were parties that were kind of loud. Most of the time it was pretty self-contained. But yeah, as I would take my dog in and out to go to the bathroom, I would just be walking by, I would look up and I would see people in the windows almost every night, probably 4 or 5 nights a week. So there were a lot of people that went into and out of that house pretty frequently. So yeah, it was kind of a party house, but again, this whole neighborhood is sort of like a party neighborhood because it's just off campus, so you sort of don't have to follow the university rules. I hope whoever did it gets found, because 4 people is not something that you just walk away from and act all normal. And so whether or not the cops think there's a danger, I disagree. I think there is a danger because 4 people shows that that person's dangerous. So I hope he's caught, preferably before I get back from break.
All right, you got to see a little appearance from Pablo there. He's my son's dog, technically, that we are taking care of while he is stationed in California. He just needed to come up here and make sure I was okay, I guess. So yeah, that gives you an idea of what it's like around there. And like I said, all the people potentially in and out. So imagine, you know, they're looking for DNA, fibers, fingerprints, hair, and having to rule out so many people. And this is one of my theories, speculation. If they knew the killer and he had been in the house before, now how will they eliminate him? Like, if he's a friend, or say like fraternity brother, or, you know, boyfriend, friend of a boyfriend, or whatever, someone that comes to their parties, their gatherings, their 10 people gatherings that they have 4 or 5 nights a week. You know, if I'm sure the surviving roommates are having to kind of make a list of who comes over, who's been there, things like that. If he's on that list, how do they say, well, he must not have done it because, you know, his DNA is here and it should be here because he came to the party. Well, here's my theory on that. If they find this person's DNA somewhere that it shouldn't be, like, let's say if it was someone that came over to see Dylan or Bethany, the downstairs roommates, that had no reason to be on the 3rd floor in Maddie and Kaylee's area, but their DNA is up there. Let's say it's somebody that came to a party outside and their DNA is on the 3rd floor. You know, something like that. The commingling of the blood is going to be tough. But, you know, there should be, if they can break it down into individual profiles and there's one that doesn't match the other 4 victims, then that's likely your killer, right? So if one of the people on the list, if their DNA matched that 5th profile, then you know it was someone they knew that had been there before. If there's blood of the killer separate from the scene. Now, by that, I'm talking like what happened in the Napa Halloween murders. If you didn't watch that video, you can go back and watch it. I think it's in the Spooky Stories playlist. And they found a single drop of blood near the window where he exited. He had cut himself, and there was one drop of blood. And if this killer injured himself, and you find a blood drop near, let's say, like the sliding glass door, or even outside, like on the patio or something like that, and again, you could have the commingling though, because he's going to be covered in blood, right? He's going to be dripping with blood, I can only imagine. But if he has an open wound that's bleeding and you find a blood drop and it's away from where the bodies are, where let's just call it the carnage, the active scene where most of the blood is, let's say it was confined to the bedroom areas and like the living room, but not the kitchen, and you find the blood drop in the kitchen near that slider, or like I said, even outside, okay, that's not one of your victims. Your victim did not get up and walk outside. That's your killer. So it could take something like that. And then, so let's say we make a list and we've got all these people that have reason to have been at the house or were at the house for whatever reason. Then you have to hope that they will all agree to give you a DNA sample, that they will let you do a buccal swab and get their DNA to eliminate them. Now, when I was in one of my forensics classes and we were doing an exercise, it was actually very cool. Our professor had a crime set up and we had to investigate it. We had other professors were our suspects, and we had to question them and just dig into them, just basically, try to figure out who did it. And one of my suspects that I really thought it was him, I went and I asked him if he would be willing to give me a DNA sample or a fingerprint to rule him out versus rule him in, to say like, okay, well, you're not there, so you're not involved. And he refused. And you can do that. You don't have to give up your DNA. I mean, I guess they could subpoena it, but you'd almost have to be a suspect for them to do that. And if they don't have a reason to suspect you, they're just trying to rule you out versus in, I would think in a case like this, most people would voluntarily give it up though. But that's a lot of people that you have to get DNA from. Let's say I was dropping Xana off and I went in to use the bathroom one time or something. Well, my fingerprints are in there. My DNA might be in there. I might have lost hair in there. Probably lost hair in there. I lose hair everywhere. So, it's a lot. It's a lot. That's why I said they've got an uphill battle. So they extended the scene to the back parking area. I believe it was 2 days ago. I don't think it was yesterday. I think it was the day before. And I'm wondering, did they wait too long? And why I say that is I feel like they should have been looking there all along, and I'll show you why. But it's kind of what I was saying about holding your crime scene as long as possible. Well, 2 days ago, how much traffic had there been in and out of there? How many people had been in and out of that area? If there was potentially evidence in that area and the killer thought, oh, I left this or I dropped that or whatever, did they have time to go back and alter the scene? So this is a picture of officers, it says investigators are searching the parking lot area behind the house in Moscow, Idaho, Monday, November 21st. And you can see the crime scene tape has been extended back there. And then this was a quote. It says, "They can look from the bushes and see a lot when the house is illuminated at night. That's troubling," said Professor Joseph Morgan, distinguished scholar of applied forensics at Jacksonville State University. Morgan is not involved in the case, but is following it closely. King Road passes in front of the home, then curves right up a steep hill and terminates in a parking lot behind the house, which is what I just showed you. The parking lot belongs to an apartment located to the left of the house. So that is very disturbing that somebody could have been sitting up there day or night, but especially in the cover of darkness, looking from the bushes, and see a lot at night when the house is illuminated. Why wasn't that area included from the jump? This is a picture that I thought was interesting. It's a group of law enforcement agents stood in the parking lot, that back lot that has now been included, as an Idaho State Police officer sprinted toward them from the home's backsliding doors using two different routes. So they're kind of experimenting with ways the killer could have exited out the slider. Which way could they have gone? So I'm assuming that they get a better idea of when they're doing like a grid search where they need to be looking for potential evidence. But again, is it too late? So this is why I feel like it should have been included from the beginning. So this is a picture looking out the slider, and this angle is towards the neighbors. Now, here's a closer look at that. Now, just from the neighbors, it's a clear view. So if it was lit up inside at night, even a neighbor could see in there, right? But look at this. This is what concerns me about that parking area. So this is looking out the slider towards the parking area, and there's that window. That's the window I told you that they were photographing and fingerprinting. So it kind of makes you wonder if maybe was that window a point of entry, that maybe it was unlocked and that's how they gained access, and then maybe they exited through the slider. I don't know, but they're both on that side. Now this is what concerns me about that. You see that arrow? There's a car parked up there. And you can see it, how close that is to that slider. It would have been so simple for someone to sit back there. And we looked the other day, if you didn't see it, I think it was my first video. There's a playlist for these murders. You can go back and watch. I showed you that kind of wooded area back there that I said would have been a good route for them to take when they left. And just look at that. It would have been very easy at night to hide back there in the foliage and just watch. Just watch the comings and goings and observe their behavior. Who's in the house? What rooms are they in? Where do they sleep? What time do they go to bed? Things like that. Very scary. So I really feel like that should have been included right away. But hopefully it won't cause too much problem. And then finally, I wanted to show you, this is the view from the balcony from up on the third floor where Maddie and Kaylee were. And you can see, again, the trees. They're right there. And that road is right there, leading to that parking area. So it definitely should have been included, in my opinion. So, like I said, they expanded the search to include that area, but it was only a couple of days ago, so I don't know if it's been too long. I'm hoping that they will get a judge to agree to a cell tower dump from maybe like 2 to 5 or 2 to 6 or whatever, to kind of just get an idea of who was in that area. But again, you look at how close, like there's all these apartment buildings and houses and things like that. And, you know, how many people you're going to have to rule out, like, yeah, they live there, so it makes sense that they were there. You know, oh, this person was just passing through. They didn't spend any amount of time there. And again, if it's a neighbor, it's going to be like, oh, well, that's not suspicious that their phone's in there because they live there. The killer may not have even brought their phone. Who knows? But I hope they can get that. And checking like nearby Wi-Fi. I know when I used to go to my mom's house, as soon as I'd walk in, my phone started trying to connect to her Wi-Fi. So is there a hotspot in their house? Is there a nearby Wi-Fi that a cell phone may have been trying to connect to? Things like that. You know, that all needs to be looked at. Digital evidence, electronics, cameras. So I found this picture. They found a camera on a house. Look at this girl's face over to the side. I feel like that's probably what I would look like when I heard what happened. But they have a camera. Now that house is right there across the street from where the girls lived. I don't know exactly where the camera's located, and it would depend on how it was angled, if it would have caught anything from the actual house, but maybe it would have caught, you know, ingoing, outgoing traffic, something like that. Hopefully they can get something from that, but they still need as much footage as they can get from nearby cameras. But again, like I said, if it's a neighbor and you see this neighbor walking by, riding a bike by, even driving by, whatever, you know, is it going to be considered unusual activity because they live in the area? I don't know. Like I said, just throwing things out there where my mind goes. Let's see. Oh, retracing the victim's steps. Now, I would think, like, we know kind of what happened that night. I don't necessarily agree with law enforcement's timeline as far as like what time they got home. And I get it. It's not like a pinpoint. It's just like they got home at roughly 1:45 or whatever. We know the girls got home later than that, and that they were making those phone calls to Jack. Xana and Ethan, it's a little confusing because they went to the Sig Chi party and it says 8 to 9. Does that mean they got there at 8 or 9? Or did they only stay an hour from 8 to 9? And if they only stayed an hour from 8 to 9, where did they go after that? Law enforcement has it listed that they came home 1:45, but Xana's dad said she called him at midnight and she was at home, I think, hanging out watching movies with Ethan. Did they go somewhere between midnight and 1:45? I mean, we haven't really heard a lot about their night. And then the two surviving roommates, they said they were out in the Moscow community. I don't know where, I don't know doing what, but they say they were home at 1. So I think they need to retrace their steps, not just that night, but a day, 2, 3 prior. Because a lot of times what happened in the day before or 2 days before sometimes can explain what happened. You know, was there a confrontation, an incident with anybody? Did anything out of the norm happen? How were they acting? Did they say anything that when you look back on it, you know, it might have meant something that you didn't pick up on at the time, things like that. So I think they need to retrace their steps back for a few days, and I'm sure they are. And anybody that has any information about what they were doing in those days prior should definitely get a hold of investigators. All right, then I have just like some questions that have been popping up in my head. So the 911 call, detectives are releasing that on the morning of November 13th, the surviving roommates summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence on one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before a Moscow police officer arrived at the location. Officers entered the residence and found the 4 victims on the second and third floors. So my big question still is unconscious. What about the blood? I really want to know the phrasing that was used in the 911 call. Was the blood mentioned? And did the roommates come out of their downstairs room and see somebody that they thought was passed out? What made them think someone was unconscious? Because if they came out, if they came up, surely they saw the blood. And if they saw the blood, why are they calling their friends to come over before they even call 911? I mean, if I see a bloody scene and somebody laying in the floor, I'm calling 911. I don't know. Ellie, they said when they got there, the door was wide open. Okay, now that in light of knowing that several friends arrived before the first responders were even called, that makes me wonder, was the door left wide open by the killer? Or was it just wide open because of the friends that showed up? Okay, and then I'm not going to get into this too much because it's just disturbing to me, but it needs to be discussed. I'm sure you've heard there was a dog that was skinned. I think it was about 3 weeks ago in the area. And law enforcement says it's not connected to the killer. But they have not found out who skinned the dog. So how can they possibly know that it's not connected? We don't know who did this to the dog, and we don't know who did this to the 4 students. So how can they rule this out? Because that is almost a hallmark of a killer. A lot of times they start out with animals, but they say it's not connected. So let me see. I have this. This is Maddie's room. And we know it's her room because you see the picture, the inset picture, the pink cowgirl boots. And there's the letter M in the window by the balcony. I don't know, it just makes me sad. And it says, on Monday, a cluster of FBI agents and the Idaho State Police were seen behind the 3-story home on King Road, trying to peer through the 3rd floor windows of Mogan's room, which showcases a pair of pink cowboy boots. Police have said the victims were murdered on the 2nd and 3rd floors. And here, this is from that expanded area. Law enforcement officers were seen crouching behind the trees that separate the parking lot from the house, looking for the best vantage point. They were about 10 yards from the home. Investigators were also seen looking for any depressions in the ground, perhaps left by the suspect lying in wait. It really sounds like that's what they think happened. But being able to see Maddie's room like that and those cowboy boots, and to just think about somebody sitting out there watching, it's very disturbing. Very disturbing to me. A lot of people are talking about, this is Murphy. This is Kaylee and Jack D's dog, Labradoodle. A lot of people wonder, like, why didn't he bark? Well, it may not be relevant. And honestly, how do we know he didn't bark? Think about it. If the roommates downstairs didn't hear 4 people being murdered, there's a chance they didn't hear Murphy bark. And again, in the Napa murders, in the Napa Halloween murders, the surviving roommate had a dog, and she was in the downstairs bedroom, and the dog gave like a warning bark, and she woke up and quieted the dog down, and she thought it might have been one of her roommate's boyfriends or somebody coming in. And so she didn't open the door or anything. She just quieted the dog down and tried to go back to sleep. So there's a lot of possibilities here, right? It's a house where a lot of people are coming and going. Maybe he didn't bark. Maybe he's used to the sounds of people going about the house. You know, there's 5 roommates and people coming and going all the time. Maybe he's just used to it. I mean, now my dogs, if somebody comes in, they bark. As you heard earlier in the video, if the wind blows, sometimes they bark. But I mean, my kids can come in. Shoot, I can come in sometimes and they bark. But at night, when they're sleeping, like if my daughter gets up to go like to the kitchen to get herself something to drink, most of the dogs are in my room, and some of them sleep in the living room. Now, the ones in the living room normally don't bark when she gets up unless she startles them, and then they might bark. And then when they bark, the other dogs start barking. But my dogs in my room, if they hear her get up, they don't bark. They know the sound like her door makes when it opens. They know it's her. So it's entirely possible that he didn't bark. But if he did bark, maybe they just were like, hush, Murphy, you know, go to sleep. We don't know. But like I said, it may be completely irrelevant. A lot of people are like, oh, Murphy must have known the person, so they knew the killer. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I don't think it's as big of a deal as what we're making it. Kaylee apparently said she had a stalker in September. She told quite a few people that. Law enforcement is looking into it. They said they got hundreds of tips about it. They haven't been able to corroborate the story, but they are still investigating it. If she did, you know, did she know who it was? Did she ever mention a name of who she thought it was, a description, anything like that? We know from her family, Kaylee was a true crimer, just like us. She was very much into true crime. And her family said that, like, if she thought somebody was following her, she would, like, videotape. And then she'd be like, call her family, and they'd be like, call the police if you think somebody's following you. And then she'd be like, oh, no, they just turned off and went to such and such place. They weren't following me. You know, that kind of thing. But she was very aware of her surroundings. And, we see even in the food truck video, I made the comment about her taking that picture, and I thought she was taking a picture of hoodie guy, Jack S., behind them. And so I feel like if she thought she had a stalker, if she had actually seen them, she probably had a picture, a description, something that somebody would know. We kind of talked about this. Was the killer watching the house? It feels like he probably was. It seems like he had a very good place to do that from. And law enforcement is looking from that vantage point to see what he could have seen. people have brought up, could he have been waiting inside? It's possible if he was watching and he saw everybody left that he could have gone in. There's lots of little nooks and crannies and alcoves that he could have hidden in. I feel like he probably was not waiting inside. My question is, could he have been inside before they left for the night? Like, if he did know them, was it somebody, maybe Dylan and Bethany, whatever they did that night, maybe they went out in a group, or something like that. And was the killer in the house and they purposefully left the window unlocked so they could come back and enter through the window on the back of the house? I don't know. That was just something that I thought of the other day. Could they have been the one, like, they intentionally left the window unlocked or the slider unlocked so they would have access to the house later? I'm going to talk about Jack D. If you remember, lots of Jacks, Jake, Joe. This Jack is Kaylee's former boyfriend. So they apparently dated for like 5 or 6 years. They shared the dog Murphy, and they were taking a break, which reminds me of Friends. We were on a break. Apparently Kaylee initiated the break. I don't know if it's because she was getting ready to go to Texas for a job. She was graduating in December and going to, I believe it's Austin, for a job. I don't know if that's what it was, but her family has said, 100% they're behind him. He's not involved. And he wasn't cleared by law enforcement when I was making these notes earlier, but spoiler alert, at the press conference, they said they don't suspect him. So, I don't know. Kaylee's mom said they were going to reconcile. I don't know how she knows that or why she thought that. If Kaylee had said that to her, she was hoping that would happen or what, but she said that she thought they were going to reconcile. He is the one that Kaylee and Maddie called repeatedly at like 2:30, 2:45, whatever in the morning. Just over and over and over. He was allegedly sleeping and didn't hear them. And she texted him, her last text to him was, "Come on, we share a dog, just pick up." This I found interesting though. So this is Kaylee's Instagram. And you can see that she is following 854 people. That's a lot of people. But she is not following Jack. There's quite a few Jacks, but not that Jack. And that Jack is not following her. Now, they had been together that long. They shared a dog. The mom says they were going to be reconciling. How come they wouldn't be following each other on social media? Something about that doesn't seem right to me. She's following that many people, and she's not following him. I'm not saying Jack did this. I'm not saying he's involved. I'm just saying it's a possibility. It's something. And then let's talk about Jack S. Showalter. He's hoodie guy from the food truck video. This is just a still from the video. Like I say, he's food truck guy. He's a neighbor. They lived on King Road and he lives on Queen Road. He was allegedly kicked out of a fraternity. I don't know which one. I don't know if it is Ethan's fraternity or another fraternity. He also was allegedly kicked out of the corner club where Kaylee and Maddie were on this night. He was kicked out that night for making girls feel uncomfortable, basically just being creepy. He's a championship wrestler. He's a hunter. On his social media, there is a picture of him with a gutted deer. He has a K-bar knife. Allegedly, he has anger issues, but he's been cleared by law enforcement. There's so many red flags with this guy, but he's cleared. He told Joe, the guy in the tan jacket and tan hat, that he was friends with the girls and he was watching them to make sure that they got home safe. Well, they don't really interact, and my question is, if they were friends or they knew that he was watching them to make sure they got home safe, why didn't they just say, hey, we got a ride, instead of kind of dipping out around the corner trying to ditch him and him going, when they left, why wouldn't they have just said, hey, Jack, we got a ride, so see you later? I don't know. Just like I said, things that I've thought of and wondered about. Here's a list of who's been cleared. The 2 surviving roommates, male in the grub truck surveillance video, which is jackass, private party driver who took Kaylee and Madison home, and all of the people that were on the 911 call, all the friends that arrived, they're not involved. And then, like I said, at the press conference, they said they don't suspect. They just said I think the male that they called, which was Jack. Next, I want to talk about the order. A lot is being made about the order. And even I, at first, was like, oh, what order were they killed in? And I was talking about using DNA to determine the order. So I made this slide to kind of show you what I was talking about. So all the way over on the left, we've got victim 1. So when you're stabbing victim 1, you're just going to have victim 1's blood on the knife. And then you move on to victim 2. Well, now you're going to have a mixture of 1 and 2 together. So victim 2 is going to have not just their DNA, but you're going to see that commingling of blood. You're going to have 1 and 2. Move on to victim 3. You're going to have victim 1, victim 2, victim 3's blood, and the same for 4. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So in theory, to determine who was first and who was last, you would go to who has the least commingling in their blood, who has the least amount of DNA profile mixture, and who has the most. Whoever has the least is likely your first victim. Whoever has the most is probably the last. But like I said, does the order matter? And this is why. So here's an example. I've come up with a few. Let's say the targets were on the 3rd floor. The perpetrator thought he could get up there without waking up the 2 on the 2nd floor. That didn't work out. So he had to kill the 2 on the 2nd floor to get to his target upstairs. So thinking that victim number 1 was the target, that we might not be right, because if you encounter someone before your target, you've got to take them out. They're not the target, but they're your first victim. You follow me on that? So Ethan was a guest. Maybe the perpetrator wasn't expecting him to be there. Maybe he didn't realize he stayed there. Maybe he thought, like, after everybody went to sleep, Ethan went back to the Sig Kai house, whatever. My thinking has been, Ethan heard something. Ethan got up. I really feel like Ethan is going to be the first victim, even if he wasn't the target. I feel like he heard something. Perpetrator took Ethan out. Xana heard something. We know Xana had defensive wounds. she heard the attack on Ethan. She got up, and then she was probably second victim, and then he moved on. Okay, let's say opposite. Target was on the second floor. It was Xana or it was Ethan. Perpetrator thought the two upstairs wouldn't hear anything, but they did. Let's say Murphy barked. Let's say he heard the girls on the phone. Let's say he heard movement from upstairs. Could have been Murphy, could have been the girls. So his target's on the second floor, but now he's got to go up to the third floor because he can't leave witnesses behind. And on that same token, I originally had said we might be able to tell who the target was because of how vicious the attack was. Like, who was most violently attacked. And after I thought about that, I don't know that that holds water anymore, because the more vicious attack isn't necessarily going to point to the target. What if, let's go with kind of my first example. Let's say the target is upstairs and the perpetrator isn't expecting Xana and Ethan to hear anything, that he can just slip upstairs without waking up anybody on the second floor. But Ethan wakes up and confronts him. And now he's pissed because he's like, damn it. And he gets in a fight with Ethan. He's going to be so enraged that, like, for one, his plan is being screwed up. And for two, he's having to fight this guy off. Because they fought back, they may have been more viciously attacked. The severity of their attack may not have been because they were the targets. They just pissed him off by spoiling his plan and fighting him. So I don't even know if that's going to tell us anything. Normally it would, but now that I thought about it, maybe not. And then we have the question of, why were the two left downstairs? My theory on that is perpetrator probably injured, probably tired from fighting and killing 4 people. And if they were familiar with the house, they may have known how hard it would be to hear down there. So if they were injured, they may have thought, I'm not going to risk it and go down there and try to take them out too. I'm just going to get out of here. They left because they were hurt, they were tired, they were done. And they didn't think that the two downstairs heard anything, saw anything. They thought they were in the clear, so they just left. Perpetrator didn't know about them. I feel like if he was watching the house, he probably knew about them. But if the perpetrator... Well, no, that doesn't make sense either. I was going to say, if he saw everybody coming home around 1:45 and the two downstairs had come home earlier, maybe he didn't know they were there, but he's not going to risk going in to kill somebody thinking that the other two could show up at any minute. So that doesn't make sense. Scratch all that. I don't think the perp not knowing they were there, that one seems least likely to me. I feel like he probably knew they were there. And also the number of cars in the driveway. Perpetrator accomplished their goal. I feel like this is highly likely as well. Whoever the target was, 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of them, when he had accomplished his goal of killing his target or targets, he left. And the two downstairs weren't targets, so he didn't need to bother with them. He was done. And then the perpetrator heard a noise and got out. This one could be likely too. When they got done, maybe they're on that main floor, the second floor. They hear a noise and they think they're going to get caught. So instead of risking it, they're just going to get out of there. It could be possible. So it's a pretty calculated risk what they did. going into a large house with an unknown number of people inside. You know, they don't know who was in the house. Are they males? Are they females? Are they armed? How many are there? Where are they located? That's why I feel like they were familiar with the house. They were familiar with the people. They had been watching them. They knew them, something. Because I don't see you just randomly picking a 3-floor house with all those cars parked there, not knowing if you're walking in and there's going to be like 5 or 6 big armed men with guns waiting. You go to attack them and you get shot and killed. I think they had to have an idea of what they were walking into and where they were going when they got in there. And this is the layout. This is the first floor. You see the front door where the keypad was, and then you've got the bedrooms off to the sides and the stairs. Now, the family of Kaylee said it's possible to come in that door and go up the stairs and just bypass the bedrooms completely. I just feel like it's unlikely. I really feel like it's unlikely that they would do that. But, I mean, it's not impossible. Now, the second floor layout, it's bigger. There's more rooms there. You know, you've got Xana and Ethan's bedroom. You've got that bathroom that's right there, pretty much adjoining the living room. And there's a vacant bedroom. I don't know if they had a 6th roommate at some point or what that room was being used for. Sorry, one of my dogs is coughing. You've got the kitchen. And then you see the stairs that are coming up from the first floor, and then over by the vacant bedroom is the stairs going to the second and third floor. Now, this is why I think there's a possibility this person thought they could get in and get upstairs without waking up Xana, or Xana and Ethan if they knew Ethan was there. If you look, the rear sliding glass door is right there. And then we know that window is right by the slider, right? So if they go in there, all they have to do really is go straight and then turn, and the stairs are right there. They didn't have to go anywhere near Xana's bedroom. But what if when they came in, Ethan heard something and got up? That's really why I feel like Ethan was first. Or Xana heard something and she got up, whatever. One of the two on the second floor, I feel like, heard something as this person was headed up the stairs to the third floor. Just because of the layout of the sliding glass door and the stairs. Why would you come in the front door, climb up the stairs, unless Xana and Ethan are the target? Then the front door makes more sense. And maybe the ones on the second and third floor heard something. Then we have the third floor layout, which is basically just the bedrooms and the bathroom and the big balcony. Okay. Here's a video from Kaylee's mom. I'm going to let you listen to it, and then we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, for all
Kaylee
of
was
us.
just home. She just left on Friday. She left on Friday morning to go to a Pi-Fi party, and she just bought a brand new Range Rover, and she contemplated all day long back and forth whether she should go home, and because she just really wanted to show it to Maddie, you know, and some other friends and whatnot. And she's just like, Mom, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the Pi-Fi party, and Maddie's got to see this, my new ride. And I'm like, for sure. Like, I mean, it was nice. It was really nice. She just bought it that day, all her own. And I talked to the girls on, she had a fun time on Friday night, both of the girls, and then both of the girls texted me on Saturday.
So you were talking to them Saturday afternoon?
Yes, Saturday afternoon. They sent me pictures of themselves, and Kaylee called me around 2:30ish on Saturday afternoon. And then I was texting Kaylee just randomly on Sunday. And right about those, when I look back at my times that I was texting Kaylee, the police were swarming.
So you were trying to get a hold of her on Sunday morning.
Yeah, just random talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, hey, what's going on? How did you guys do last night? We talked a lot.
So I find it interesting that Kaylee wasn't supposed to be there. This was kind of a last minute decision for her to go back, to go to that party. But mostly she was going back because she wanted to show Maddie her new car, her Range Rover that she just bought. But we're going to talk a little bit about motive, targets, just oddities. What could it all mean real quick? So Ethan didn't live there. If he was a target, why target him there? I mean, I guess it would be easier to get him there than it would be at the Sig Kai house where he lived, but he didn't live there. So if he was a target, then it definitely was planned because they wanted him at that house. But he's a 6'3" tall athlete, and this is mainly why I feel like it wasn't a female. And nothing against us women. I'm sure we're perfectly capable of killing 4 people if necessary, but he's a 6'3" athlete. And I feel like he fought. So that's a lot. Motive, jealousy of Ethan. Now, jealousy of what? Jealous because of the frat? Because he was in the frat and this guy wanted to be in that frat because he was in this frat and maybe Ethan blackballed him and that's why he didn't get in the frat. Or, maybe it was over Xana. Maybe this person wanted to be with Xana and was wanting to take out Ethan. And it was like I talked about in the beginning, like, what does he have that I don't? Maybe he was pissed off that both of them. He's mad because he wants to be with Xana and she wants to be with Ethan. And he's mad at both of them because she won't give him a chance because she's with Ethan. And what makes Ethan such a great guy as opposed to me, kind of thing. Who knows? Kaylee wasn't supposed to be there. She might have had a stalker. Could it have been somebody? She was broken up with Jack. We know. Could someone have wanted to date her and she wasn't interested? Either because she just wasn't interested in them that way, or because she was getting ready to leave and start a whole new life somewhere else in Texas. Was this person, like I said in the beginning, trying to kind of charm her and get her to want to date him? And he knew he was running out of time. She graduates in December. She's going to Texas for this job. She's still not interested. She still doesn't see how great I am. I'm not going to lose her. I'm not going to let her go. One of those, if I can't have her, nobody can kind of situations that we see a lot. Could it have been something like that? Absolutely. But again, she wasn't supposed to be there. If this was planned, how did this person know she was going to be there that night? And I feel like this night was picked for a reason. If this person knew her well enough, if they knew her schedule and what she was up to, if they knew that she wasn't going to be there, why this night? Or was it like, oh shit, she's back, I'm going to do it now kind of thing? I don't know, but she wasn't supposed to be there, and I feel like that's kind of important. Now, I mean, like I said, this person could have said, like, she came back, I think her mom said on Friday, and this happened Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Maybe they realized she was back on Friday and thought, hey, this is my opportunity. So, I mean, just because she wasn't supposed to be there, they could have found out that she was and just sort of altered their plan of when they were going to do this. But what if somebody maybe Maddie was the target. You know, same thing. Why is she dating Jake? What's so great about Jake? What doesn't she see in me? Kind of thing. I mean, he could have wanted to date any of the three girls and felt like rejected for whatever reason, or you know, friend zoned by the girls, and was tired of it, was sick of it, just, you know, done. And then I mentioned, you know, the cool kids, the popular thing. You know, we see it a lot with school shootings, that, you know, they just feel like an outcast. You know, maybe this group made this person, not intentionally, but made them feel bad in some way, or like an outsider, like an outcast, and not intentionally. The way these people have been described, I don't think they would intentionally make somebody feel bad. But this person could feel slighted in some way, and this is how they channeled their rage. Like I said, I feel like it was planned, because it seems like they knew the layout of the house. And after showing you the diagrams, I hope you kind of can see where I'm going with that. Another thing I thought of is, if Kylie or Maddie were the target, what if they were in the same room? They were best friends. What if they were making those calls to Jack, just one right after the other, both of them on their phones? If they were in the same room and they passed out, fell asleep, whatever, if the killer went into Maddie's room and unexpectedly found Kaylee in there as well, collateral damage, wrong place, wrong time. If he had intended to only kill one and they were together, now he has to kill both. There's just a lot of unknowns. You know, maybe he didn't expect that. I want to play this video. We're almost done, I promise. I want to play this video. This is Kaylee's mom, and she just kind of has a message for the killer.
Whoever did this is still out there.
Yes.
Do you have a message for them?
Turn yourself in. Stop all this. Let us mourn our children, and we can't when we know this person is out there. You know who did it. You know who you are. Just end it. The guilt has got to be just overwhelming. It's got to be sickening. Stop hiding. Stop running. Just turn yourself in. Just turn yourself in so we can move on. We can bury our girls. We can have a celebration of life for them. And continue to mourn and try the best to heal, start the healing process. But we can't with this person just running around out there. This person's dangerous. And we fear that this person will do this again.
Now that he's done it once, he can definitely do it again.
We have no idea why. None. There's no reason why anyone should have been targeted for any reason.
These were young, beautiful children that were starting their lives. And they were successful. And they were go-getters. And they were strong. There's absolutely no reason for jealousy or anything for someone to take for children's lives like this. Turn yourself in. You owe it to these mothers of these children, these fathers, these families. You're wrong. Turn yourself in.
You said something that I've never even thought of, which is, it's almost the worst nightmare, which is how do you bury your daughter knowing that they could possibly come?
It's you know, it's going to be, the services for these girls will be huge, you know, public. Mm-hmm. And to think that this person is sitting, you know, there at the church, just, I can't.
You're worried that the killer might show up to their services.
Absolutely. Their candlelight vigils, you know, all of that. It makes me sick that this person could be there, standing right behind us, waving a little candle. You know, it's sickening, absolutely sickening.
Yeah, it's awful to think that the killer could be at the funeral or the candlelight vigil. Ethan has already had his funeral. The girls have not. And what an awful thing. I mean, obviously they can't put it off forever. They can't put it off until this person is caught. But how awful to be looking around, wondering, like suspecting everyone there. Maybe it's them. Maybe it's them. I'm God, like they're not dealing with enough. So I'm gonna put this picture up really quick. The surviving roommates got this. This was on, I think, Dylan's social media. They got this tattoo, and it's angel wings, and it's got MKXE in between. This is Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, Ethan, MKXE. Love you always and forever. So I thought that was kind of cool. As far as the timing, why that night? My thinking is it's pretty simple for me. You can see it on my sweatshirt. Thanksgiving break. Think about it. If this person is part of the school or knows them as part of their friend circle, they probably knew about all the Greek parties that were going to be going on. They probably knew that they'd be going out, that they'd be drunk, they'd be inebriated, coming home and passing out, which makes them easier targets. If they're drunk, if they're passed out, they're much easier targets. And then the mass exodus of the college for break. This person can slip away and it's not going to look suspicious that they suddenly take off or disappear. You know, they talk in Delphi about people, you know, strange behavior, things like that, like distancing themselves or acting different. Everyone's going to be leaving for Thanksgiving break, right? And then this happens and people start leaving early. But regardless, you've already got that built in. You can leave and it's not going to seem strange, unusual, unexpected. Of course you're going to leave and go home and spend the holidays with your family, right? And that, to me, is another obstacle for law enforcement. Everybody has just sort of scattered to the wind. Everybody is leaving and going home for break all over the country. So your suspects are everywhere now. Your suspect pool is very broad, very wide. Who you need to talk to, who knows where they're at now. It's going to be even harder to track them down. And what if they don't come back after break? What if they decide that, you know, they're so traumatized by the murders that they're not going to return to school? That's a big obstacle. And then my last thing that I'm wondering about is, and I'll put it to you. Do you think law enforcement has a suspect in mind and they're just waiting for the science to come back and confirm it? Like, they need more evidence. They have a pretty good idea of who did it, but they need something solid, like a fingerprint, some DNA, a fiber, a hair, or something like that to nail them? Or do you think that they really have nothing? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to show you this video. It's all the roommates. It was a TikTok. I just wanted to share it because it's kind of neat to see like who they were in life. And it's funny. They're all imitating each other in the house. So we get to see them. We get to see the house. And I just want to show you that real quick.
God, it smells like dirty dick in here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy. Oh my God, it's 9:10. Guys, can anybody drop me to class? I'm fucking late for my meeting. I'm supposed to be there 10 minutes ago. Did anybody do their chores today? Fuck, I'm just gonna do it. Oh, shit, you guys. It's 8. Gotta go. Jake's calling. Oh, Jake's calling. Oh my God, I look horrid. Oh, Murphy, you look so cute. Get out of here. You seriously gotta get out of here. You're fucking stinking this shit out. Okay, guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but, like, what would you guys do in my situation? Dana, where are you going? Yeah, I gotta go to the pool. Yeah, I fucking failed. 2 of them already.
wine night? Like, let's just do a wine night.
Yo, is it okay if I have a party? Like, just 3 or 4 people at most.
All right, so to finish up, I'm going to put their pictures back up, and I am going to put the tip lines back up, and we will talk about today's presser. Like I said, most of it was stuff that we already knew. Let's see. One thing they said was interesting when they were talking about sending in tips. They brought up the digital media link for the FBI, and they said to send in your pictures and videos, even if you think it might not be related, because sometimes what isn't in a picture or video may be as important as what is. I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see. Moscow police is still the lead agency. They gave us kind of a behind the scenes. They have taken in 103 pieces of evidence. They have taken 4,000 photos of the scene. They've done multiple 3D scans. They've put in hundreds of man hours. They have processed over 1,000 tips and have done 150 interviews. There is going to be a November 30th candlelight vigil at 5 p.m. at the campus, and they're also going to have it live streamed, and they're doing, it's called Light the Night that night, for people to remotely participate that can't be there in person. And the president of the university said they sent out a letter to everyone regarding their plans for remote and live instruction to end this semester. So again, like I said, if the person decides not to come back, they even have the opportunity to finish the semester remotely. So, some of the questions that they asked, let's see, we found out there will still be a heavy police presence after break. They are not going to release the 911 transcript right now because it's still part of the investigation. The stalker is not yet corroborated, but they're still checking on it. They would not say if there was evidence that the perpetrator was on the first floor at all. Detectives will be working tomorrow, which is Thanksgiving here in the United States. The governor, I think they said his name was Governor Little, has made $1 million available for expenses in the investigation. They asked, how come they are not telling us who they think was targeted? And the answer was that they have to weigh what they released versus what they're trying to gather to get more tips. While they want more tips, they want to make sure they're the right tips. And so they're going to still keep, as far as what they know about that, they're going to keep that to themselves. They will not say who was targeted or why. They talked about looking in the vehicles at the house because they were considered part of the crime scene. They did not say when there will be another press conference. And that is really about it. So, sorry this was another long one, but I hope you guys appreciate all the information that I gave you. And I hope everybody, if you're in the United States or wherever you are, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you're ready and that you have a fabulous Thanksgiving with your family tomorrow. Keep these families in your thoughts because all 4 of these families are going to have an empty chair at that table tomorrow. It's heartbreaking to think about, especially at the holidays. It's sad anytime this happens, but with it being the holidays, it hurts a little extra, you know? I have things to do tomorrow. I have to make pies and turkey and all that good stuff. But if I get a chance, I may make a short video. Maybe I'll go live. Maybe you can watch me and my daughter make pies. I don't know. We'll see. Little information about Leilani Simon. Not a whole lot, but we'll see. If anything breaks, which it's been crazy here in true crime world lately, hasn't it? I will let you know. But thank you, as always, for spending a couple hours of your day with me. I really appreciate it. Please like this video. Giving it a thumbs up really helps me a lot. It gets it out in the algorithm and more people can see it. So like it, share it. Make sure to use the hashtags, the Idaho students, Idaho homicides, things like that, so more people can get all of this information. Comment, as always, and let me know what you think about what I said, what ideas you have, questions, theories, whatever, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you're new here and you're not subscribed, I would encourage you to do so and click the bell to all so you get notified anytime I upload or go live. And if you're interested, sign up to become a member of the Steve squad on our channel. Steve is my house chicken if you're new here. But thank you to everybody who has been here from the beginning and everybody that is new to the community. I love you all. You're the best. And have a happy Thanksgiving. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.